Hello again and welcome to Sailboat Building video series. My name is Panu and I'm building this 50-meter liveaboard cruising sailboat here in Finland. So far this project has been mostly preparation by building this shed, and in last few videos I really started the boat build by making these two frames you can see behind me here. In this video we're going to focus on shaping these two frames because I think it's now a good idea to do something else than the frames. You have probably seen that pretty much already. If you haven't checked the videos up there, there is 4 of them which covers pretty much all the process that goes into making these frames. However, the frames are not ready yet. They are laminated, yes, but they are not shaped to the final shape what they need to be in the boat. In earlier video where I did this test frame piece, which is actually part of the frame here, you can probably see the similarity with that one. This is shaped so that the shape of the outer edge kind of follows the shape of the hull of the boat. And also on the top side here there is some shaping to accept the beam that goes inside here, and also the bulwark which will be right in here. So we need to shape this part and these upper parts to match the plywood sheets that are CNC cut in there. That brings to the few questions I had on the previous videos in the comment section, that why I just don't laminate these roughly and then put them through the planer and CNC cut them afterwards. Well, this might work. This is small enough, but these frames, I mean, pretty substantial and heavy, so moving them isn't really that easy job. And I really would like to avoid work done after they are laminated as much as possible. And I think this system really achieves that. But now I think I'll just grab that smaller frame and we start figuring out how to shape it and how to handle it. The shaping isn't really the problem. I think the problem is more how I'm gonna handle it while it's pretty big and heavy and awkward shape. And so yeah, let's start doing something. Oh, and remember to subscribe, of course. Thank you. On the background, in last couple of weeks I've been preparing the next frames, and actually 5 of them. I haven't been filming that much because, yeah, you know the drill. But here is some parts and these floor pieces which are much smaller in these frames. And these are the molds, and this time I'm making them with MDF board. I got for free quite a pile of that, and I'm just trying to use this. They are not thick enough, but they're very constantly thick, so I can put these on top of each other and put some spacers between and then form the thickness I need. And I think this works pretty well. It kind of eliminates one big job of gluing some scrap wood together to get the material to cut these from. So this is going in the background, don't mind that. We'll get back into those in later videos, I think. First, I of course needed to move the frames to the workbench. Handling them isn't actually easy. Their center of mass is kind of in awkward place, and figuring out how they behave is pretty difficult. This is the first frame I did, and it is not perfect, as you may know. There are some mistakes and voids here, as you can see, and also the slat that is the last one isn't really in right position. But before we go to the shaping, let's jump a few weeks back. After the lamination, I filled up these top ends by putting some pieces there. They're not really structural, just pieces to fill the shape completely. Then there were these damages. That was my fault when I ripped it off from the table a little bit too aggressively. So these need to be fixed. At that time I didn't have the new batch of epoxy received yet, so I needed to use all that I had. Here I'm first putting the other end of that filling pieces on there. And then just fixing the ripped pieces with some epoxy. This was pretty straightforward fix, nothing really special about it. But then I made also a little bit of thickened epoxy with some sawdust and filled a couple of voids. Then after a few days of hardening, it was time to get the clamps off and trim the excess pieces off. And then the frame was in form that it is right now before we start to shape it. I started the job with power planer to get most of the material off that has to be removed. I haven't got very much experience with power planers, so I was pretty careful. After a while I got a pretty good hang of it. The shape became pretty good already. I was pleased to see that the filling of the knot voids and all these joints were absolutely perfect. There were no voids or any holes inside the lamination. However, the last frame and some mistakes while laminating created a bit of additional work later to be done. Then it was time to make the final shape, and I just grabbed hand planer. The power planer felt too aggressive to make the final shaping. It took a bit of time to get hang of it and how I should make this, but eventually it was pretty straightforward. Then I clean up these voids and these will be filled later. And the final job was to make the surface smooth by sanding it lightly. All right, now the outer surface is done. The majority of the material I took off with the power planer. That is pretty aggressive. It went quite quickly. And then I took the hand planer and kind of finalized the job, and then I just sanded it to create a smooth surface here. It's pretty good. And the result of the lamination is also pretty good. Of course, this is the first frame we did, and there's some defects and mistakes I did. I have to fill them a bit later. But I can now see many of these joints here. They look perfect on all these joints with the slats look pretty much perfect as well. And now the next step is to shape the inner surface. Of course, this is pretty much flat. There is some shaping to do on those ends, like in this test piece, like this one. Then I'm thinking of putting a radius on these corners right here, because I think I'm gonna cover these frames with thin fiberglass layer just to protect them from any direct hits, to prevent the water going into the wood and end grain and places like that. That's one thing I'm gonna eventually test, not right now. I think the best option here is to just get the trimmer roller and roll these inner edges. I can still believe that this is actually part of the boat. It feels like a test, but yeah, this is gonna be part of the boat. Pretty exciting. Oh, one thing I'm not gonna do right now is this right here. This is a pre-cut hole for the wind vane I might install on the stern. So the wind vane pipe would go through here. But that's just a placeholder right now. But that's easy to do afterwards. On the inside there is just a few remains of the mold flappies that held the frame on the table. The result was pretty good. And then the same thing to the other edge as well. The final shaping was made to the top parts that form the bulwark and clamp molding slot. I started the job with the multi-tool and it worked pretty well in here. And I tried to make the shaping with power planer, but the shape of the slot here is pretty difficult and it was hard to find proper angle for the planer. Then it was time to try the hand planer, which was pretty difficult as well. Then I decided just to continue the work with the multi-tool. It actually worked pretty well. After taking majority of the material off, I just continued with the hand planer. Fastest planer in the world. These inside corners were pretty difficult to get to with the planer, so I just grabbed the multi-tool again and finished the job. And the final treatment was just a bit of sanding. Then there was also handling the end of the frame and the slot in here. This slot is for aligning the frames with the bulwark pieces that will be cut with the CNC as well. On the other end, I used a bit more traditional methods to clean up the slot. And as you can see, again, handling these frames is pretty difficult actually. The final job was to sand all the surfaces, just to make them a little bit nicer and get rid of all the excess epoxy dots and stuff like that. And here it is. This is the first frame and it's not perfect. There is some voids and little imperfections, but I'm pretty happy with the result. It is totally usable. Alright, about 4 hours later, I could say this frame is now done. Nothing really major issues here. Everything went quite smoothly. Now the outer side is shaped and also these ends are shaped. So you can imagine this is now the stern of the boat. Hull will be right against here, and on here will be the beam that goes across the whole boat, and this upper section is the bulwark that goes all the way to the front. So all these notches and things here kind of shape the boat pretty well, and it should be easy to laminate things against these eventually. I have now sanded this side, but the other side, this front side, which is the bad side in this case, the lamination didn't go very well. On this side, I haven't touched this side yet. I'm still thinking if I should just plane this off because it's not attached at all points perfectly there, and there is a little bit of wobbling going on. So it's maybe easier just to plane this completely off, but I'm not gonna do that yet. There's plenty of time to figure out what I'm gonna do with that. But that's about it. That's the process of shaping the frames, and now they are done. One more thing I want to show you. You can see probably this notch right here. There's similar notch on the other side. I made these just before I cut these, and they are the places for the rub rail of the boat, which should be on this height. And I haven't done this notch yet in here because I'm not sure if that rub rail is going to extend all the way to the stern. It probably will, but I can do this later on. And that's one reason I don't want to cut the other side of the plywood off yet, because I have to align with that as well. So we'll get back into this later. Then I also tested the router bit to round this inner corner here. And the result is actually pretty good. I think the fiberglass will go nicely along there, and it's, well, I think the result is nice. But I'm not gonna do that yet either, because these upper surfaces here, this straight section, that's kind of a surface reserved for something if I need to attach a beam or anything to support the deck or something like that. This surface will be gluing those in. I'm probably gonna think about that a little bit more before I do the roundings of the corners. But now I think that's it for this video. This was much faster video to film. This was just one job to show you. The previous videos, all of them have spanned over many weeks or at least many days, and yeah, it has been quite a job to just edit and figure out what to show you. But this might be a little bit easier. After this, I think I'm gonna get the other frame under work, shape that. It's much bigger and much heavier, but I think the system here works pretty well. On the background, I will go and make the next frames. Currently, I'm just waiting for even more epoxy to arrive. I have some of that left, but I'm not sure if that's going to be enough for another frame, so I'm not gonna take a risk there. I'm rather going to use the time to prepare everything, make more slats and make more pieces and stuff like that, and then I can go and make probably 2 frames per week when the epoxy arrives. Yeah, there has been a bit of delay with that. The amount you saw last time was all of that in Finland currently. So, yeah. If you had anything to add or advise how should I do this more efficiently, put comment down below. And yeah, remember of course to subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video. This is pretty exciting now when the production of the boat really starts. See you. Bye.